if you're telling, you're selling. And normally if you're selling, the other person, if it's your spouse, ain't buying. Hey, Charlotte Volsch, by the way. Charlotte, you're an author, Charlotte, if you didn't know that. You wrote a book. You wrote a pretty cool book. What's the name of your book, Charlotte?
Thank you, Jess. I did write a book. It's called You Can Be Right or You Can Be Happily Married.
Which is exactly why I wanted to have you on the COVIDs over here. This is a big part of it, right? There's been a lot of memes over on the socials these last couple of weeks, some kind of funny, not so funnies about, where all is this going to land? There's a lot of divorce lawyers that are tying their little bibs right now. I know that's a super creepy way of thinking about it, but it may be the truth. It very well may be the truth. I do have a cop friend, and he was saying that domestic violence was up through the roof already. So that's gross all by itself. So I guess maybe this would be sort of the lagging indicator of some of that stuff. So, hey, let's hang out. Let's do little Zooms and let's try to nip that in the bud. Can you share with us, we'll call this the how to prevent a breakup, during a lockup or lockdown or whatever. We'll have some fun with that. But
breakup during lockup. I like
there we
that.
go. Yeah. So what do you got for us? You wrote the book on it, literally. So, what can we do, Charlotte, to make sure that we don't kill each other during this time?
Well, Jess, thanks for asking me. And first off, I'll let you know that tomorrow, ironically enough, is my 37th anniversary.
Hey!
Yeah. And when I got married and I looked at getting married, I put it off a long time because I didn't think it was the right road to go down. But I wanted a great marriage. I didn't want a long one. I'd been around too many people that had been married a long time to just kind of have that little nip, nip, nip chatter at each other. And I thought, that's not where I want to go.
Right.
And so actually, I wrote my book in 2012, published it in 2014. And it was really working through a lot of setbacks and disappointment because marriage is an amazing process. It's the most unique relationship a human being will ever have. And honestly, I'm still working through because you never arrive. I've discovered, I've never arrived, but I'm constantly and consistently, and the evolution continues where I had to elevate to a higher version myself to appreciate my spouse's evolution. And
hold on. You had to evolve. You had to elevate to
absolutely.
A higher version yourself in order to appreciate your spouse's situation. That's an unpacker right there, right? Because it's the old classic trope of, whatever you admire about people is usually the things you associate with and you admire about your friends. And then it's a vis-a-vis, the things that you loathe about other people oftentimes are the things that you don't like about yourself, right? So there's this,
very true.
There's this grand architecture that's taking place where if it was just a more self-examined life, you could perhaps find yourself fixing all of your walls out problems, interpersonal problems, by simply going walls in and addressing the ones that exist inside yourself. Case in point with your spouse, right? Because this is the game that's being played every day, every night. It's like you're never going to get more at bats about the, inadequacies going on in your own self-development than you see in the ails and problems that you have with your spouse. So now it's just getting magnified because you're spending so much damn time with each other. You just went from 5 at-bats to 50 at-bats.
You're absolutely correct. And also, pointing out that what we admire in others is what we'd like to see in ourselves.
Yeah.
What we loathe is what we hate about ourselves. So that's just truth. And so in order to allow him to continually bloom and evolve, I have to encourage it, but I can't create it. I have to realize that he's got his own blooming to come in, and I can either encourage it or squelch it. but I can't create it. It's in there. And so shame on me if I don't allow it to bloom.
You know what that reminds me of too is, and I'm an old 80s baby, right? You know, so I came up in the, do you remember the sitcom Married with Children?
Yes.
Right? With like Peg and Al Bundy?
Yes.
Right. It was one of the themes of the writers, and of course, little did I know at the time because I was too young to appreciate it, but it was a greater trope of all relationship. But how whenever the wife Peg wanted something to happen, she would trick Al into thinking it was his own idea.
Right.
Right. And then it was like, and then she would be sitting there when she finally did it, and she'd be like, ging, 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 to herself, and the audience would laugh at the bit of the buffoonery of it. But what is in sort of embedded in there is like medicine to the mashed potatoes, is that's the way it has to work, because you can't tell anybody to do anything, right? It's like, if you're telling, you're selling. And normally if you're selling, the other person, if it's your spouse, ain't buying, right? So it's like, that's a cool title, but like, how do you actually do that, Charlotte?
Well, you know, like I just said, I realized I had to grow personally myself before I could encourage any kind of growth or allow any kind of growth in him. So, you know, I don't have a secret recipe for that. It's just a realization that I can't change anybody but me. And I often see people that think, well, after we get married, it'll be different and da 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 da. No, it's just going to be more of the same, and it may go one direction or another. But you're not going to have this little incubator you're going to put your spouse in and cook it up. So it's just the way you want it. You got to allow them to grow into their best characteristics that you were attracted to in the first place, and then some, and just allow that blooming. I can't overemphasize that. You know, I have this saying that when you're green, you're growing; when you're ripe, you're rotting. And I never want to rot. You know, I just want to constantly be growing myself and allowing him and those around me to be able to grow at their pace. That's what I had to embrace, was at their pace. Like, you know, if they don't get it right away, it's okay. And I found the more I elevated me, the easier it was for me to allow them to grow at their pace. So that's.
You mentioned wanting to touch on 3 sort of seminal pieces, right? So I love this as almost kind of being like a little hack. Like if someone happens to catch this while they're thumbing through the socials or whatever they do, you know, and they're finding themselves inside of this little truth here, maybe even feeling the pressure, you know, by being in the cooker of the quarantine and everything's on hyper, right? Yeah. And then exacerbated by the fact that we're probably off our diet, we're not exercising as much, like talking about bringing your own best you into it. What are the 3 things you want to make sure that you leave us with here to stave off the breakup?
Yeah, so you know what I looked at is it just boils down to 3 key components of really keeping the, you know, I have these ropes here, Jess. I brought in these 3 ropes.
Okay, we got props. I love it.
So I look at marriage, you know, it's the most unique relationship. You'll never have another one like that because it is so woven together. So if you have 2 pieces of rope, and these are all really skinny ropes, so I got 3 ropes here to show 3 strands. But if you have 2 pieces of rope and you weave them together, it's way stronger than either one of them are by themselves.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. So then, whoops, let me grab my other prop here.
Which actually, while you grab your prop, is actually the way a rope is constructed in the first place.
Exactly.
It's a series of little strands tying together.
A series of little strands tying together, and like this one here, and what it's just was so skinny. I got the 3 ropes, but anyway, so 2 together, you're locking pretty tight. But when you have 3 strands, and for me, that was a discovery in my married life. gosh, don't get me into the Boy Scout rope tying. Okay, when you have 3 strands woven together, it makes it like it's not going to come undone. That's like, this little skinny rope here. It's not going to come undone unless you cut it and manually start to unravel it. And that 3rd strand in there for me is to have a spiritual relationship. I need to have God woven in there to keep us where we need to be, keep me where I need to be in this evolution of me, and allowing him space. But then back to your key points that I mentioned. The 3 key points is, first one is kindness, and the second one is sex, and the third one is me time. So let me just expand on that a little bit, if I may. What I've discovered is you can't be kind and angry at the same time. You can't be kind and fearful at the same time. And it just brings out the best me when I'm kind. And so what I've had to do over the years, and trust me, this isn't something that one day, bam, it was just magnificent. It's a work in progress all the time. But if I can interrupt myself before I act, it's kind of like, grabbing the cookie. Instead of taking the cookie and later saying, I wish I wouldn't have, if I go to reach for the cookie and go, oops, wait a minute, do I really want that? So if I go to say something, I go, whoops, is that kind? It just allows an elevation and a way of looking at things from a different perspective.
Well, and what I love about that too is, it ties in for me as I'm experiencing you share that, it ties in for me what the end goal is. What the end goal of me to say the thing that I want to say in that moment is to be understood. It's to be heard. And it seems so simple to say, okay, like if I do it in a non-kind way and that agitates or makes my spouse then become defensive, if there's a spectrum or a scale and understood as a 1-to-1 ratio, how far off am I already starting at a deficit if I have to then unfurl all of the emotion that I just created by the way that I said the thing I wanted to say? So
true.
Like, I might experience you saying that and being like, oh, okay, so then what am I doing? I'm walking around on eggshells. What? I can't say what I'm going to say. Like all of a sudden I turn into an Italian all of a sudden. I don't know how that happened, but
I don't either.
Can't say what I'm going to say, but the truth is like, what's the outcome? Is the outcome to have a fight? Okay, well then rock and roll, whatever, right? But if the outcome is for me to be heard and understood, to actually move the narrative, right? Then it's that self, I don't even know what you call it. It's not self-correction, it's self-awareness. That's what it is. It's a self-awareness of just like, how would this, say it out loud first. Like, how would that probably land? Is that kind?
Right.